I remember playing Half-Life 2 right when it came out, and in order to get it, it was a big deal, at least for me and my family. You see, I was 11 years old when Half-Life 2 released, and in order to get a computer that could actually play it, you had to shell out money. Even back then, if you didn't have at least about $1,000 or so, you could just forget about having the specs to run it. And my family had money until they didn't, which is another story, but somehow, some way, even with financial hardships, I scoured the best and cheapest parts for a custom PC build, and I got Fry's Electronics to build it back then by getting my grandma to subsidize my dream, which was to play Half-Life 2 at all costs. And just one more quick little thing before I get into the game. It's really interesting to think about the motivations for me wanting to play it as well. Leading up to the release, I didn't know too much about Half-Life, but I do remember my dad and his buddy playing it one day and them sending me up to the other room because it was an adult game. But years later, leading up to the release, I remember finding a video that was also a little mini making of the game, and they talked about how they got hacked and how devastating it was for an early build to get released. Watching that video as a kid, my heart really went out to the team that was developing Half-Life 2, and it couldn't help but build part of my fascination with needing to experience it when it came out. Additionally though, the groundbreaking graphics at the time also really played into why I wanted to play Half-Life 2. Up until that point, you just couldn't even think about coming close to film animation in a video game, but Half-Life 2 really seemed to be the first game that really tried to, or actually started to, bridge that gap in a lot of ways. Or at least it was one of those games that had some sort of modicum of mainstream appeal that was trying to bridge that gap. And, I was a cool kid in my own ways, but also a little dorky, and I wanted to experience the best that graphics had to offer. Back then, I would sometimes make trailers and mashups for some of my favorite video games, and I'd post them to the website Game Trailers, as YouTube still hadn't come out yet. And to make videos back then and be into gaming, let alone PC gaming, you had to be a special kind of dork and have a relatively decent computer. It wasn't like now where basic video editing seems to be just another part of being alive in modernity. Now it feels like making videos is a skill set that everyone should have and something that they should probably just generally be doing the same way they take out the trash. Anyways, I was playing through Half-Life 2 again, and I couldn't help but feel like the game is such a snapshot of that time for so many reasons that might not even be obviously apparent at first glance. For starters, let's talk about the city scanners. In a lot of ways, they really sell the whole Orwellian nightmare that is Half-Life 2, but also they're such a product of their times. Part of their ominous nature is that in order to surveil you, they follow you around by flying all over the world or whatever. In so many ways, that's such a disheartening and almost depressing tell of what our vision of a dystopian future was back then. There's no way even the devs could have foreseen a world wherein people are essentially contributing to mass surveillance themselves, and that there wouldn't even be a need for something like that to keep tabs on everyone. Back then, a flying metal bug that followed you around and flashed a camera in your face felt like the apex of a dystopian paranoid nightmare. It was this idea that surveillance was this big, heavy, industrial process, something you needed a whole machine for. A machine with propellers, lights, sound design, a literal spotlight on you. It had drama. But now surveillance is silent, frictionless, and completely invisible. You carry it in your pocket. You charge it at night. You update its firmware. The Combine didn't need scanners. What we didn't know back then, what we could have never known back then, was that they could have just invented Instagram. And that's one of the reasons why replaying Half-Life 2 just hits different in 2025. It's not just nostalgia, it's this weird cultural time capsule of what we feared before we even really knew what to fear. And it made me realize something else too. Half-Life 2 wasn't just a game I played. It was a lens into a future I genuinely didn't understand yet, and that no one did and no one could have, even if they wanted to, because back then the idea of a dystopia was physical. It was boots on your neck, concrete walls, checkpoint gates, drones with camera lenses that clicked and whirred and flashed. It felt like the future, if it went wrong at least, could be cold metal and harsh lights. But the real dystopia turned out to be prettier, smoother, friendlier, with rounded corners and notification sounds. And going back to Half-Life 2 in 2025, that contrast kind of hits you in the chest. It's like replaying a dream you had before you knew what nightmares actually looked like. Like, one of the strangest things about replaying it today is realizing how little the game even acknowledges the internet, or doesn't really. Not in a lore sense, obviously the Combine shut down communication, but in a cultural sense, in that early 2000s or even late 1990s sense. Because at the time, the internet was still this weird, fragile, dial-up adjacent thing that you only used in pieces and made weird noises like... It wasn't the air we breathed. It wasn't a constant presence that you logged on to see how your friends are doing that you fell off with. It wasn't this invisible infrastructure connecting you to your entire life. And Half-Life 2 reflects that. When people in City 17 need to communicate, they don't text, they don't send encrypted messages, they don't hop on a VPN, and they don't hit a group chat. A lot of times they're using radios. Actual analog radios. Crackly, glitchy, short-range, unreliable radios. Like a world stuck halfway between the Soviet bloc and a sci-fi police state. It's kind of surreal to notice that now, because back then, that didn't feel outdated. It felt normal, standard. Of course the Resistance used two-way radios. Of course the Combine jams frequencies. Of course they track transmissions. That's just how a dystopia would work. The idea that information might flow freely, invisibly, instantly, wirelessly in your pocket 24/7, that wasn't even part of the mental vocabulary of the time. The real future, the one we actually ended up with, wasn't even on the table yet. So you get this odd, almost charming version of oppression that's entirely industrial. No facial recognition, no biometric tracking, no predictive algorithms, just metal, noise, and machinery. Revisiting it now, it feels like watching an alternate history written right before the world took a sharp left turn. That's the feeling I can't shake. Half-Life 2 is a world where surveillance still has to announce itself, where oppression still has a physical presence, where communication still requires a device you have to hold up to your mouth. And realizing that, feeling that contrast between the dystopia we feared and the one we actually got is one of the strangest things about going back to it as an adult. Remember when I said how PC gaming was expensive back then? Well, it was. And not only that, but for me, that $1,200 computer I got built for Half-Life 2, it didn't last long. It got overheated, and I couldn't finish the game on my computer. We tried to get the computer fixed multiple times, but because I opted to have it built in a small form factor that was probably overly ahead of its time, the computer always ended up overheating and dying. The funniest part of this is that since I was 11 when the game released, my dad would now play Half-Life 2 with me. There was one point where I had gotten fairly far in Nova Prospect. There was this section where you had to use a bunch of turrets in a jail setting. I was playing with my dad, and I went to the bathroom, and my dad deleted my save files as a joke. Couple that with the PC then breaking because it overheated, and I couldn't actually finish Half-Life 2 until it came out on the orange box on Xbox or PlayStation. I can't remember which one I got it on. I think it was my 360. And I was able to finally finish it. And looking back on it now, that whole series of events, the overheating PC, the save file sabotage, the weird half-finished memories of Nova Prospect, it all kind of folds into why replaying the game now feels so strangely meaningful. Because Half-Life 2 wasn't just a game to me. It was a moment where my life, my interests, my childhood, and the entire trajectory of technology all intersected for a brief moment. It's easy to forget the power of something as silly as a video game, how they can sneak into your life and quietly shape it while you're not paying attention. So when I got back to Half-Life 2 in 2025, sure, I'm revisiting City 17 and the gravity gun and the scanners and the canals and all that. But in a weird way, I'm also revisiting that kid who wanted something so badly, he made it happen. The kid who begged for parts lists, who read forums he barely understood, who watched behind-the-scenes videos out of empathy for a team he'd never meet and that would ultimately backstab him by not giving him Half-Life 3 or Episode 3. The kid who didn't see a dystopia yet, just a possibility. And that's the real reason this game hits differently now. The world changed, technology changed, surveillance changed, our fears changed, and most importantly, I changed. But the feeling I had when I first stepped off that train into City 17, that quiet sense of awe, somehow didn't. And maybe that's why Half-Life 2 is still magical. Not because of what it predicted, not because of what it got wrong, but because it captured a version of the world and a version of me that only existed for a moment. And I finally got to finish it, even if it took me until the orange box to do it.